So I've been comparing characters that are fairly similar to each other and reflections in a lot of ways, but I think it'd be pretty neat to compare two characters that are just kind of balls to the wall different. So I'm going to go with Gavin Guile from Lightbringer versus Perrin Aybara from A Wheel of Time. I will be pulling away from consistently relying on Wheel of Time characters after this. It's just where I feel the most comfortable, but I'll be pulling away and doing different examinations from all kinds of different series and comparisons and stuff coming up soon. But real quick, before we get into it, major spoiler warning for both Wheel of Time, but especially Lightbringer, because getting right off the bat, I'm going to need to talk about some stuff with Gavin that is a heavy spoiler. So if you've not read Lightbringer or have any interest in reading it, please click off the video now. Okay, so what are the categories going to be? Of course, it's origin, development, role, interest, relationships, and who would win in a fight. There is a pretty big disparity here in number of books that the characters can fall back on, but I think the fact that Lightbringer is so much about Gavin Guile / Seamas Gallagher that he certainly can hold his own against Perrin Aybara. Getting straight into it, origin. You know the most important factor for me for origin is going to be originality, and Perrin Aybara, unfortunately with the Wheel of Time being so in love with tropes, is going to suffer here greatly. I love his origin and adore it dearly, but being from a small town blacksmith's apprentice and having the very typical, oh, I'm a villager and I go through villager apprentice things upbringing, it's a stereotype in fantasy, and it's not going to lend you a whole lot of credit here. On the other hand, Dazen / Gavin Guile is amazing with his origin. Really not even being the person who we first think he is, and then having that pulled out from under us, and it turning out that Gavin is Dazen. And Dazen, we've been told, is this monster, but slowly unveiling the mystery of what really happened and who was really the monster in the war between the brothers. Totally works for an origin that is original, fun, and captivating for everyone involved. Without even needing to get into it that much more, Gavin Guile takes the first point. Yes, I'm calling Dazen Gavin because we refer to him as Gavin for 90% of the series, but I know it's Dazen, but we're calling him Gavin. Next, we have the development of the character. Now, for development, there's actually an interesting kind of contradiction here. With Perrin Aybara, we start with a scared farm boy who turns into basically a demigod, the demigod of wolves. But for Gavin Guile, we meet an arrogant god at the beginning of the series who's broken down to pretty much a nothing of a man where we last left him off in the series. He has everything stripped from him, even arguably his sanity. These are two very different paths of development for the character, but with Perrin's slow progression throughout the Wheel of Time being so detailed, and with every decision building the momentum of his development in such an extreme way, I have to give this point to Perrin. It's just the way Wheel of Time develops characters for me. It's almost always going to win out. It's where Robert Jordan's writing shines strongest. He is a master of development, and Perrin arguably has some of the best development in Wheel of Time, and he slowly becomes a leader, and I think every reader of the Wheel of Time considers one of the greatest. So I'm going to give Perrin Aybara the second point. Now we have the role they play in the world they're in. It's not only about importance, but the execution of that role itself. Perrin's role is massive. He's one of the trio. He is part of the stool that holds up the metaphor in the Wheel of Time. If he falls, the shadow wins, and he is rebuilding the kingdom of Manetheren, also the king of wolves, and overall just a golden-eyed badass who helps shape the world in a positive way and even helps reform the freaking White Cloaks. That's a lot of things, and he is certainly critical in all of that. But Gavin Guile's God. Gavin Guile is the warrior and the king, the god among his people. He is the end-all be-all of what this society revolves around, and it's executed and told to us magnificently. Brent Weeks did a wonderful job forming a society around one man, a religion around one man, and wars revolving around one family. Pains me to do it, and this is an extremely close point in my mind, but in terms of role they play in the world they're in, I'm gonna give it to Gavin Guile. Now we have interest for the reader, and I think when it comes down to these two, it's pretty extremes when it comes to personal taste. Are you more interested in the underdog up-and-comer that is Perrin, or do you like the fully realized character who's struggling with more internal conflicts on a grander scale and going up against other demigods of Gavin Guile? There's no real right or wrong answer here, but I would have to say I am partially leaning towards Gavin Guile by a smidgen. It more has to do with the the fact that his character is pretty original and the execution of this new idea is done so well, every reader is going to be kind of hooked on that what's next idea. For Perrin, though, there wasn't really a whole lot of that. I think a lot of people could call Perrin's path maybe not all the way down the road, but at least a few chapters ahead nonstop. And with a couple personal relationships making a few chapters and a actual huge section of the series with him, 3 books, almost unbearably boring, except for a few incredibly intense scenes, that actually is going to massively hamper Perrin here. His character arc is a large reason the slouch in the Wheel of Time happens.
Get on with it.
So Gavin Guile gets a point. Next up, we have relationships. Gavin Guile suffers a lot when it comes to relationships in my mind, because we are told and we are implied he has a lot of close connections to people like Kip and his previous lovers and father, but it's almost all internal for him. He is an egotistical character, and his internal dialogue focuses on himself a lot of the time. His ego is one of the biggest hurdles his character has to overcome, and with a large portion of his POV being very dismissive of people around him and not really caring as much as he should until it's too late, I'm gonna give Perrin a big leg up here, which when I first started doing this video, I didn't think would be the case, because I'm really not that big a fan of Perrin's love interest. His friendships are mild to good, but he has a few that stand out as great, especially those with wolves and the village he goes home to. He kind of has a relationship with this place, and that kind of builds his character quite a bit. Seeing how his evolving role in this world really changes how he interacts with the people around him, and I give Perrin quite a bit of credit there, and it gives him the leg up over Gavin Guile in this case. Perrin's going to walk away with a second point. So now we have who would win in a fight. I'm taking both these characters at their absolute peaks. Perrin right at the end of the Wheel of Time, and Gavin/Asian Guile right at the beginning. Now, Gavin Guile has arguably one of the most badass power sets in fantasy, period. He can craft all these different Luxons and do tons of different materials around himself, really creating whatever his imagination desires. He can craft everything from hard armor to rubber and lubricant. Luxon is really just limited by the wielder's imagination, and he has quite literally a limitless supply of it. He's a demigod for a reason, and on top of that, he is physically above what any normal human being should be. But then you have the Wolf King, Perrin Aybara, the Walker of the Dream Worlds, and that last part is what makes Perrin walk away with the victory. At the end of the Wheel of Time, Perrin is seen to be able to drag others into the dream world. If Perrin gets Gavin into the dream world, Perrin's not a demigod, he is God. He has absolute control over this world with his will, and he has been shown to have a mountain of a will and experience around this world. He would crush Gavin like an ant. It wouldn't even be a fair fight. I'm of the opinion that if Perrin got Rand in the dream world, he could crush him. So this is basically reality warping to the nth degree and causing Perrin to essentially be above and beyond what most channelers can do, especially willing Balefire out of existence. That is scary on a level. And all it would take is Perrin to get close enough, which I think he certainly would do. Gavin Guile's fighting style is pretty up close and personal, and he wouldn't know what he's going against. Meanwhile, Perrin certainly would, and can take a hell of a beating before going down. We've seen that several times from him. Plus, he's one of the best melee combat fighters in the Wheel of Time, able to do unspeakable things with his special hammer axe Mjolnir. So this means we have another draw, and these two need to swap worlds. Who would fare better in each other's world? If you drop Perrin in the political thriller type setting that we see in the Lightbringer series, this is pretty much his worst nightmare. He doesn't like politics and scheming and going behind people's back. He's a simple man with simple objectives who walks a line. He would get betrayed and I think caught off guard, maybe poisoned or killed very quickly. He just doesn't have the brain to work in this world. Maybe he could get away from the Chromia and kind of just go off and be his own in the woods and join up with whatever wolves there are out there, but I don't think it would go very well for him. Even if he was able to do that, he would have to kind of become the more primitive Perrin we see earlier in the series. Gavin might actually fare pretty well in the Wheel of Time world. One, I'm not going to take his power source away from him because it's never stated that he has to rely on the world that he's in. He just converts light into Luxon. In addition to that, he's used to the political scheming we see in the Wheel of Time and on a whole nother level. He's been betrayed by the people closest to him several times. It would not be easy to catch Gavin off his guard. All that being said, he also is strong enough to pretty much take down anyone Perrin takes down throughout the series, except for maybe Slayer trying to invade Gavin's dreams. But I'm pretty sure Gavin would be able to draft within the dream world, and Slayer's abilities within the dream world are far below that of Perrin at the end. And I'm pretty sure Gavin could defend himself in the dream world if he just relied on his Luxon alone. He is smart enough to also maybe figure out the rules of the world around him, well, in the dream. So all being considered, I'm giving the final point to Gavin / Gavin Guile, the demigod from the Lightbringer series, the bringer of light. This was a surprise to me going into it. I thought for sure Perrin would win because he is one of my favorite characters in my favorite series. But Gavin has just some very interesting aspects to him that swept the categories he really needed to come out on top. I don't know why I'm talking about this like it's a sports game. It's just an excuse to talk about characters I like. Let me know what you thought I got right or wrong in the comments down below, what matchups you want to see. This one was actually inspired by another that said Perrin Aybara versus Jon Snow. But when I sat down to look at that, Perrin swept every category by a lot. I don't like Jon Snow that much. He's just kind of not my favorite in execution, and I don't give him a whole lot of credit. Thank you for the suggestion, though. It inspired me to do this one. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you're feeling super generous, and have a great day. I will see you all tomorrow.